This is Daniel Poppy, host of How to Write Good. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Kim Meyer, the host of Choose to Rise here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Choose to Rise, where we talk about living with positive mindsets, how to increase our confidence, building our faith, and living out our life on purpose. A new show comes out via podcast every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And if you want to catch the episode live instead, stop by Public House Media around 6:45 Central Standard Time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday as well. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of Choose to Rise. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hello and welcome to Your Soccer Passport here on Public House Media, sponsored by Squadcast.fm. I'm Brice Burge. Ivan Sanchez Carrasco is a little under the weather, so he will not be with us this week. Your Soccer Passport is sponsored by Squadcast.fm. Unlike other options out there for recording your podcast, Squadcast.fm allows you to record all of your WAV files locally on your computer, which means that you do not have to rely on internet connection for your podcasting experience. To get a 14-day free trial, please visit Squadcast.fm for more. So, no Ivan Sanchez Carrasco today, but that means that he will be back next week. He can make fun of me for all the things I'm about to say throughout the show. We do have Luis Burranca. He'll join us a little bit later. He'll talk about the Copa Liberatadores matchup and what that will mean to everybody, especially in how intense that rivalry is. Just an instant classic of a game, a must watch for any true soccer fan. That first leg ended up being a 2-2 draw. Let's talk about another instant classic though, because it's a big one for a lot of us that are near and dear to Portland. That is the best loss ever, is what it is being marketed as for Timbers fans. Seattle wins 3-2, but Portland comes back to win in penalty kicks after the 4-4 aggregate. Portland will move on to the MLS Western Conference Finals. Sebastian Blanco, Darian Asprilla, your two goal scorers, as well as Ruidez and Lodiero for Seattle. In what was going to be an intense matchup, this is always a big one for the rivalry, the Cascadia Cup. All the times that you've had a matchup between Seattle and Portland one way or another in the MLS or earlier, you just have good matchups. And this is what it came down to again. Seattle came out gangbusters, just completely coming out there, forcing the offensive ball, forcing Portland to play defensively and not necessarily what they wanted to do in terms of the players that they got out on the field. But, formation-wise, they had enough to kind of slow down what Seattle was giving until that 68th minute. Ruidez went out and had an amazing goal. That's just the way that he, the Peruvian native has done it all this year for Seattle. He showed up big and got this equalized until Blanco came up and did the exact same thing on the other side. This was a going back and forth type thing, even through everything that led up to that penalty kick. And you hate to see penalty kicks that aren't like the end game penalty kicks have such a big influence. That was what ultimately sent it back towards the tied aggregate, and it's been frustrating. It's been frustrating in that sense, but ultimately Portland comes out. They win 4-2 on penalties, and this Portland squad, which had shown some weaknesses earlier in the year, went out and defeated the number 2 seed in the West. We talked all year about how the West was a deeper conference than the East, that the West went out and had everybody fighting for spots, whether it was Ibrahimovic bringing on all the dead weight that was with him in LA with the Galaxy this year, whether it was Real Salt Lake doing a good job against LAFC, and we'll talk a little bit about their performance against Sporting Kansas City here shortly. But, I mean, Portland went out there and showed that anybody at any time in the West can go out and win. It was a good win for soccer in that regard. So let's talk about Real Salt Lake. Let's talk about a potential opponent of them. Real Salt Lake looked really shoddy there at the end of their home leg. In the first leg of this matchup, they ended up drawing with Sporting Kansas City, and then Sporting Kansas City came out in the end and made it a final of 4-2, 5-3 aggregate in favor of Kansas City, who was the number one team out of the West this year. Rubio and Saloy went out and had 2 goals in the first 20 minutes. Sporting Kansas City looked like they were going to roll, and then Real Salt Lake settled down. They started playing smart soccer, which is something that they didn't play for the first 20 minutes, arguably the first 25, 30 minutes of that matchup, but they were able to kind of rebound a little bit, and Saucedo came up big for them. And then Krelach all of a sudden comes up and does something big too, and keeps him close. And another penalty. Penalties are big. That's kind of the thing about the MLS is that Wild West style, you're going to get penalty kicks a lot more often than you do in other leagues. And Sanchez put it home. That was your eventual game winner for Sporting Kansas City. It's going to create a good matchup because now in the West we've got Sporting Kansas City and we've got Portland. 2 stalwarts, 2 teams that have done a really good job throughout the year, throughout the last 5 years as a whole. Always there, always willing to put up a good show. And I'm excited to see what the 2 teams will do in response to everything. I mean, Kansas City, I think, has a stronger defensive line than Portland. I think they'll be able to get the ball forward again. But it's not necessarily a way that they want to go unless they start controlling the ball with their midfielders a little bit more efficiently, and kind of like that sixth, like the part of the midfield that's not across the midfield line. You're still a little bit on your heels defensively. That's where they kind of flub it up possession-wise, and they'll get the ball down the field a little bit, just kind of conceding the ball and kicking it away, but they won't necessarily do anything with the ball to maintain possession consistently, depending on what kind of press the other team builds up around it. Portland could do that. Portland has the strength in the midfield, both offensively and defensively with their midfielders, to allow any kind of offensive or defensive formation to pop up. The question is are they consistent enough in the back end to make sure that Sporting Kansas City isn't going to score? Kansas City ultimately will benefit from a higher scoring game. And so Portland, I think, really has to make sure that they're standing off on defense and allowing their guys over the top to really kind of make some sense with all of this and go after it in this next round. Well, we got some more time to talk about that next round before with the next show, so we'll get Yvonne's opinion on that. Let's jump over to the other side, the East. Atlanta United, let's talk about them first. They ended up winning 3-1 in the second leg. Joseph Martinez and Miguel Almiron, once again, they're your goal scorers. Nothing surprising from this matchup. Atlanta went out and won it. They came home and they did all right. They had already been in the driver's seat anyway by winning that first game in New York. So unless NYCFC was going to win this game, it was dead in the water anyway. And everything was as we expected with Atlanta winning this one. Let's jump to the other side because that game was a lot more interesting. New York Red Bulls down 1-0 going into Columbus. Columbus had never lost a playoff series or a multi-leg series like this when they won the first game. New York Red Bulls had never won a playoff series like this, even going way back to the Metro Stars age, where they had never won a playoff round or a playoff series while losing the first game. So both of those monikers kind of went out the window when the New York Red Bulls went out there big and won 3-0. Alex Mule went out there. A good redirect on a set piece. Kind of got lucky. It was his first playoff goal. Just right place, right time, right foot. Puts in the back of the net. Gets things started off good, but that's only a draw. That's a 1-1 tie at that point. Daniel Royer, though, scoring 2 goals in 3 minutes. One on a rebound opportunity, one just on a rocket from the top of the box. What a beautiful, beautiful shot. Daniel Royer did an amazing job of making sure that the New York Red Bulls were in this no matter what happened. And that's kind of the big deal because the Red Bulls have had just such a long playoff history of dropping the ball, of not knowing how to make it on to the next stage. They were, Peyton Manning's Indianapolis Colts. They were Rouleau's San Jose Sharks. They just got to the playoffs, and then they fumbled it every single time. So now that they're in the playoffs, they won the Supporters' Shield. They set the record for most points won throughout a year. They do that by stealing it from Atlanta, who now they play Atlanta in this finals. And you've got two teams that basically have an opposing philosophy to winning at this stage, whether it's the long-standing history of Atlanta, whether it be the Falcons, whether it be the Braves, whether it be the Hawks or the Flames or the Thrashers, whatever you can say about Atlanta 28-3, it's just not a good scenario for Atlanta sports. Really, the only times that they've done anything is that one time in that the Atlanta Braves were able to do anything. And, they won a National Lacrosse League title last year. Okay. Well, now you got Red Bulls who, again, can't go out there and win playoff series. They went out there and won a playoff series this time. But to do that, they had to get the number 1 seed. They'll be the number 1 seed against Atlanta. A good regular season once again. And these two teams coming together, this has been the collision course in the East the entire time. Columbus, they made some upsets. DC United, they had to make a massive tear later on once they got Wayne Rooney to make the playoffs in general and knock out Montreal. But that being said, this has been what everyone has expected. New York Red Bulls, Atlanta United. This is going to be a high-scoring affair. This is going to be a good matchup. And the last time that these two teams came out, you didn't have Bradley Wright Phillips. You didn't have some other key pieces for the Red Bulls, but the Red Bulls still went out there 1-2-0 because that was right along the time where Atlanta was starting to talk about losing Almiron to Europe. Well, that was right before their coach went off to go coach in Mexico, or coach the Mexican national team. Rumors and uncertainties abounded against Atlanta. But now Atlanta's settled down a little bit. And New York Red Bulls has a confidence that they've never had before when it comes to playoff victories. This may be the best conference championship series that the MLS has ever put together. And it isn't your LA Seattles. It isn't your San Jose LAs. It isn't anything that you've seen from the Western Conference because that's typically where it would go. But, we also saw some really good DC United, New York Revolution battles way back in the day, too. That being said, Red Bulls, Atlanta, this coming up series, this is going to be a good one. I'm excited about it. You should be excited about it, too. And I think that's going to be where we leave it off just for this first segment. Just kind of playing it solo for this first time around until we get Yvonne back and we can really get his expertise in this too. So more informational than anything. When we return, Luis Burranca will join us. He'll talk about the Copa Liberatadores final. The first leg was an instant classic there too. And it's just amazing what playoff soccer can do when you bring the Argentine Derby into the great tournament that is Copa Libertadores. When we return, that will be up next here on Your Soccer Passport on Public House Media. Hello and welcome back to Your Soccer Passport here on Public House Media. I'm Brice Burge. Now joining us on the show is Luis Burranca. He's filling in this week. He's doing a good job with that, and I can't thank him enough for that. Luis, how you doing today?
Hi, Brice. Thank you once again for having me here at Public House Media here in Your Soccer Passport. And yeah, we had a hell of a weekend. Well, it didn't start very well last Saturday. Match of the greatest Copa Liberatadores final stage had to be postponed until Sunday. So many bets got ruined last Saturday. So fortunately, we had the chance to watch one of the greatest matches of all time, which is the Super Clásico between Boca Juniors and River Plate.
And when you talk about one of the greatest matches of all time, you're not just talking about the rivalry. You're not talking about the cultural and historic significance of this game. You're also talking about what happened out on the field, a 2-2 draw between Boca Juniors and River Plate. And watching the highlights of this game, watching the game live, what an exceptional matchup. This one was one for the ages, an instant classic, and a must-watch for any true soccer fan, regardless of club or country. Let's start off with the box score. 2-2 was your final. This was the first of two legs. Ramon Abila scored a first for Boca Juniors before Lucas Prado scored in the very next minute for River Plate. On the other side, Dario Benedetto scored in stoppage time of the first half, and the only tally in the second half came from an own goal. Izquierdo's in the wrong place, wrong time on a set piece in the 61st minute. Ends up giving an extra tally for River Plate, and that's how we ended up. Statistically, very similar. 13 to 12 shots on goal in favor of Boca Juniors, 5 on target for River Plate to just 4 for Boca. Possession almost 50-50. Pass accuracy is probably the one that has the most discrepancy. 73% accurate for Boca. River Plate just 67%. That's 2/3 of their passes were connected. And then yellow cards were the other big one. 4 yellow cards for Boca compared to just 2 for River Plate. Now that the box scores out of the equation here, let's talk about the gameplay itself. Luis, what did you see out on the pitch that should excite fans for the second leg?
Well, first of all, Boca came with everything they got. Their main plan was to save people like Dario Benedetto and Carlos Tevez on the bench, just to put them on the second half to annihilate the match, to finish off the match. However, the plans they didn't went so well for the main coach Guillermo Barros Esqueloto. One of their players got injured, so Christian Pavón is one of the best players in Boca Juniors. They had to force Dario Benedetto's inclusion, which meant Boca settling off the match. If the plan didn't go so well for the locals, on the other hand, River Plate came with many lowdowns. When I say this, I mean not just their main coach, Marcelo Gallardo, was there because he was on suspension, but also one of their main stars and their captain, Leonardo Poncio, was suspended. He was injured. He couldn't make it to this match. And well, talking about things outside the field, River didn't want to play this match on Sunday. They wanted to postpone it when they had this raining problem. They wanted to postpone it until next Saturday. However, Boca Juniors' directive, which was having control or the drive, which was on the driving seat of this match, they wanted to make it as soon as possible. That's the reason why they wanted to play last Sunday, yesterday, but things, as I said, didn't went so well planned as they wanted to do it. River Plate came not with everything they got. They put a main lineup of five main defenders, three midfielders and two forwards. Very defensive lineup, and which is going to be very different for next match, which is going to be in the Estadio Monumental in Buenos Aires. For me, the best scenario for the final of Copa Liberatadores, which is the last match of Copa Libertadores, which is the last final, which is going to be decided in two matches, as local and as visitor.
Yeah, you talked about a lot of things there. That last point, I think, has to be touched on a little bit, just because this is the last time that Copa Libertadores will do the home and home, the two-leg scenario compared to a winner-take-all neutral site game. That being said, the teams that are involved in this is your Argentinian derby. This is your Yankees Red Sox. This is your all-time biggest matchup that you can have with teams in that area. And so the home and home aspect is big because, as Ivan did last show, he stated just how big of a deal it is to play in these matchups, in these games, in these stadiums, specifically because of the difficulties involved with the people in the stands that choose to throw things. There were people, River Plate, I think, tried to take a corner, and there were things being thrown Philadelphia Eagles style at him that were just such a big deal. Trying to take a corner kick with missiles is the way that the Sun described it in their report. So, I mean, obviously, when you have that aspect into it in the last home and home, you're just pointing out why it should move to a neutral site game. But that being said, you talked about strategies. You talked about coaching strategies. River Plate needed to warm up in this game. They looked like they were the team that were not prepared at the start of the game. They were overly defensive. They were overly protective, and it caused some problems for them because they weren't getting anything in transition, and they weren't getting anything in terms of sustained offense. They weren't looking comfortable up until maybe the 28th, 30th minute, well over halfway through the first half before they started looking comfortable out on the pitch. And with that, now for them to come in there and say, well, we got 2 road goals where we drew on the road. Now they can kind of come back and say, like, all right, we've got everything going in our manner, and they can set up an entirely different scenario of a team. We could be looking at a game that has absolutely nothing stylistically the same as the first leg. And that just makes this so much more compelling to me, because we saw one game of one type, and now it's going to flip-flop as we go to another thing. And River Plate, that's always been kind of their game plan. But now for Boca, what are they supposed to do? How do you compete against something like that when specifically you had the opportunity to take charge, to make things go your way? You made things go your way with the time that the game was played, and then you still managed to only draw. What does Boca do before this next leg?
Two things first. One, you were totally right when you said that this was a main over defensive match for River Plate, and besides, and as a matter of fact, this was a match that for me was very surprising because two of the men of the match, and one side in Boca was the goalkeeper, Agustin Rossi, who was very criticized in the Copa America's time in this year. He got very criticized because of his lack of, of jumping. He got criticized because of the way he couldn't stop the ball as they wanted. He had many bloopers over the season, and as a matter of fact, I saw almost a very horrible blooper in the first match, which was here in Lima against Alianza Lima. And on the other hand, we saw another guy who was very criticized over the Copa Liberatadores season, this last season, who's Lucas Prato. He was lacking of goal. He was lacking of many of this killer instinct which main forwards have. And back when he was playing in Brazil, because he used to be a very respected guy in the Brazilian league. He was a main forward. He didn't used to play with some guy who was making a company with him in River Plate. He's doing that with this Colombian guy, Rafael Borré. And this is a different Lucas Prato. You can see more. Played for, in my opinion, after this big Franco Armani saved in the last minute, Lucas Prato was the second man of the match in River Plate. And on the other hand, when you're talking about the scenarios, this stuff, the next match is going to be totally opposite with the Bombonera match. This first match in Boca Juniors field was probably more to intimidate River than to go all out against them. River didn't have what it took to win the match. However, Boca, on the other hand, they had a plan which failed. Which Boca Juniors on this first match, they had all the setup, but it couldn't last with the injury of Christian Pavon. All went down through the toilet. It's now for the second match. I don't know if you saw it, but after the final whistle, we saw Carlos Tevez cheering for their teammates. He was telling them, "Hey, look up! Don't look down. The match is still going. We have 90 minutes left. So, and it's 2-2, which is the final whistle. The final result was more for River Plate because of the visitor goal. However, Carlos Tevez is this guy, which we all know him for the Premier League days. He's a captain for Boca Juniors. He's not the same player he was 10 years ago, but he's still a leader. He's cheering his teammates up, and I want to see this Carlos Tevez in the second match because, as Argentinians say, they have all the meat in the oven on the barbecue. They have all the meat in their bench. They didn't use it in the first match. I hope to see it in the second match. They have this big, great central forward, which is Juanchope Avila, Ramon Avila, or the other central forward, which is Dario Benedetto, who is more technical guy. He reminds more as Martin Palermo. He's not like this Hercules guy, which is typical of the central forwards. He's more like this cerebral guy who's more a thinker, which is more maybe the brains in in the field. He's a super killer striker, but he's more a technical guy. And besides, they have a leader, which is Carlos Tevez, which we can see him cheering the guys up. He's a captain inside and outside the field, and he deserves more minutes in the second match. I truly believe that Boca didn't want to win this match. I didn't saw all the attitude. I saw almost a B team in the front, in the forward place also. I want to see a different Man United match this Saturday, 24th.
Yeah, and that's right. It is going to be November 24th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time that the second leg between River Plate and Boca Juniors will face off. It will be at Plate, so you never know what's going to happen at this point. Just because there's so many wacky things that can happen, you know that there's going to be a completely different type of game. Luis, you've done a great job in breaking down not only the stylistic aspects, but the players and the roster formation that can help make that be a difference in this matchup. And as somebody who doesn't follow South American club soccer as much as I probably should be if I'm co-hosting this show, it has been very nice to appreciate just one heck of a first game, a first half of a two-legged scenario that is only going to make this so much better. And I can't wait till the other foot puts down and we see what happens up. Luis, thank you so much for coming on the show. Emergency fill-in. I know that this was a busy day for you, so thank you so much for coming in on the show today. And thanks for your analysis.
Thank you, Brice. And once again, thank you for all the Public House Media for having me here once again. Hope to see you guys next time.
We'll do that. We're going to go to worldwide headlines, and then when we return, we'll talk about the U.S. women's national team 500th victory and what exactly does that mean for soccer as a whole. You're listening to Your Soccer Passport on Public House Media, sponsored by Squadcast FM. Time for worldwide headlines here on Your Soccer Passport. A look at the other major news from around the soccer world. The Manchester Derby once again showcases the bad spot that Manchester United is currently in as they lost 3-1 to their city counterparts. Man City comfortably won the matchup, outshooting United almost 3-1 as they jumped out to a 2-0 lead. It is just another moment of difficulty for Jose Mourinho and his crew, who currently blame the last outing on fatigue thanks to Champions League matchups in Italy. The U.S. men's U20 team defeated Suriname 7-0 on November 9th to win their group of the CONCACAF U20's Champions Stage. The win capped off a perfect performance of 15 points in 5 games. The Americans move on to a qualification stage where they'll play the Group E winner Costa Rica and the Group C winner Honduras. Those games will be on November 16th and 19th respectively. And FC Cincinnati has revealed their new logo as the team jumps up to the MLS next season. Sticking with the blue and orange colors, the team has included a lion to their coat of arms with multiple nods to the city's geographic and Germanic heritage. That was Worldwide Headlines, sponsored by Squadcast.fm. Segment 3 is up next here on Your Soccer Passport. Welcome back to Your Soccer Passport here on Public House Media, sponsored by Squadcast FM. All right, final segment. It is just me for this one, so I will make it short and sweet, but it is a necessary talk because of the important historical significance and just what this means for U.S. soccer and soccer worldwide as a whole. The U.S. women's national team won its 500th game in program history by defeating Portugal in Portugal 1-0. Jess McDonald got her first goal ever for the national team. It was the difference maker in this 1-0 final. The U.S. women's national team is the first women's team to make the 500 game and 500 victory platform. They are also the fastest club, men or women, to get that title. Wow. What a big accomplishment for the United States women's national team. I'm sick and tired of it because the women's national team is the biggest deal in terms of women's sports in the United States. It is the biggest deal in terms of women's soccer and soccer in general for a weakened U.S. side that is still waiting for a men's national coach, for a women's team to come up, hit the 500th win, to get back to the World Cup, to win the World Cup multiple times over, and to not get the recognition that they continue to deserve is infuriating. This is a squad that has won more games against their best opponent than their best opponent has won against them, and that's China, by the way. We've got France, we've got England, we've got Australia coming up, and these are some wonderful women's teams. You've got Japan in that mix as well. But don't get me wrong for a second here when I say that the women's national team for the United States is the best that there can be. When you have the teams that are coming out of Scandinavia, especially with the consistency that Norway, Sweden, and Finland put out a national team for the women, it is apparent how good the women's national team is. They were able to coast into World Cup qualifying once again. They did that with an impressive victory over the Canadians, a Canadian squad that needed that win to make sure that they had the confidence because their window is closing. There is a changing of the guard up north. But yet, we continue in the United States not to give the women's national team the credit that they deserve. Let's just kind of go over their dominance currently. The U.S. is 17-0-2 in 2018 with wins against Denmark, Germany, England, Mexico 3 times, China twice, Japan, Brazil, Chile twice, Panama, Trinidad and Tobago. The game that the U.S. men's national team lost meant that they could not go to the World Cup. Well, U.S. beat Trinidad and Tobago. That's why they were able to go to the World Cup. They also beat Jamaica, Canada, and Portugal while drawing against Australia and France. The U.S. is unbeaten in its last 27 matches, a 24-0-3. They've outscored opponents 92-17 through that time, scoring in all 27 games. It's been 32 games since the U.S. has not scored, and that was their last loss against Australia, an Australian side that benefits from the growth of the NWSL and a growth that is organic due to the goodness of the American women's club scene. The women's national team has not conceded a goal in 794 minutes. For a team that constantly gets ribbed on by analysts for their lack of consistency in goal, that is a long scoring drought for opponents. 794 minutes. Ridiculously good. Ridiculously good that this team continues to go out every single time and win these games. There's only a couple more opportunities for the U.S. to get their side back up. Portugal definitely showed what to expect in the World Cup against teams like the level of Portugal, the ones that are going to be overly defensive and hope that they can hopefully get enough in the games against common opponents in terms of skill level. The Panamas, the Jamaicas, the Italys of the world, and grind out and get that final spot out of group stage. But they're going to have to protect themselves against the Germanys, the Brazils, the Canadas, the Japans that will continue to just rout this tournament when it comes to the World Cup this summer. So Portugal did what they were going to do. They were going to go super defensive the entire time. They played 9 players in the back box, the defensive third, the vast majority of the game. It forced the U.S. to really make sure that they were getting all of their opportunities. And McDonald, the kind of player that she is opportunistic and is wise on the pitch. So to have her go out there and put back a goal like that, like she did to get this game winner, not surprising at all. The question is now, and that's a phrase that I use commonly when I have to monologue segments. The question is now, what will the U.S. do to show support for the women's national team? Because they're going to need it when they start going up against the final 8 in the knockout stage here in the World Cup this summer. It's time we start paying attention to the women's national team the way that they deserve. And right now, they are the biggest story in soccer for the United States because on the men's side, we continue to drop the ball. We talked about that in the first segment. I think we'll have our new men's national team coach by Thanksgiving. But that being said, that does not take away from what the women have consistently done for the United States. I hope that you'll continue to root on for the U.S. as they continue along. I know Mexico does not make the World Cup this year. Canada does. So depending on where you're from and where you're listening to, there's lots of options for you. But the United States are going to make waves in France this year on their Tour de Four, the quest to be the first team ever to win 4 Women's World Cups. That will do it for this week's Your Soccer Passport here on Public House Media, sponsored by Squadcast.fm. I want to thank Luis Burranca for his time on the show, talking about Copa Liberatadores and the amazing Argentinian derby that is developing there. And also want to thank you for listening. And as a shout-out, I want to give a quick shout-out to Yvonne and hope that he feels better here soon. Your Soccer Passport is available on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever your favorite podcasts are found. And until next time, I'm Brice Burge. You've been listening to Your Soccer Passport here on Public House Media, sponsored by Squadcast.fm.